We're going to discuss the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's. And I have handouts here that I will give you all so that if any of you are taking notes, that's fine if you want to, but I also have handouts to make it a little easier, okay? Memory changes that disrupt every life, everyday life, every life. That's not good. And I'm going to get my notes here. And I think I'm going to put them over here so that way I won't be in everybody's way. One of the most common signs that we see with people who develop Alzheimer's is that they can't remember things that happened 2 or 3 weeks ago. Maybe they can't remember things that happened 2 or 3 days ago. But that's the most common thing. So it's very confusing to us because we're having a conversation with them, and by George, they can tell you what they paid for a coat at Montgomery Ward in 1942. Might even still have the receipt for it. But they can't tell you what happened in their church social function last Sunday. So that's one of the most common things that we see, is that their memory, they can remember long term, but they can't remember that short term. And when I say short term, that means things that have happened recently. They may forget dates or events. We hear a lot of people, I've heard a lot of people over the years say, well, Mom forgot my birthday, or Grandma forgot to bake the cookies for the cake social, or for the church social. So they tend to forget dates and events. That's a normal thing. This one I love this one. They ask the same question over and over and over again. And I do mean over and over and over again. And let me tell you, they're not doing it to get on our nerves or because they're being belligerent. As I experienced this with my mother, and she would ask me the same questions over and over and over again, I finally decided at one point, you know what? She's asking me these questions because she wants to see if I'm going to give her the same answer. Don't think that's why she was doing it, but I had to find some humor in there and a way of coping with that same question. And I'll give you some stories about same questions here in a little bit. One of the other things that may disrupt daily life is when they have to use notes. They have to write things down on notes. Well, I hate to say this, but I write things down on notes all the time. Now, my problem is I might forget where I put the note. Or it may be on a piece of scrap paper, and then I turn the scrap paper over and I don't know where I've written my note. So they use reminder cues. They may use little post-it notes or scrap paper, or write in the column of the newspaper. You may see things like that. So they use reminder notes. They also may ask a family member or a neighbor to do something for them that they've always done themselves. So the family member or the neighbor may think, that's strange. Well, Bob used to always mow his yard and trim his shrubs himself, and now he's wanting me to do it. And by looking at Bob, I can't tell that anything's different with him. So they may ask that someone else do something they used to do. And the reason they do that is because they can't remember maybe all the steps to operating a lawnmower, or all the steps of using a shrub cutter for shear. See, I don't even know what a shrub cutter is called. So what's typical? Sometimes forgetting names or appointments, but remembering them later. I've done that before. I forget appointments. Again, and if I don't write them down on a piece of scrap paper, then yeah, chances are I'm going to forget it, or if I don't write it down on the calendar. But sometimes forgetting names or appointments, but remembering them later. So, how many of you do that? How many of you forget things and then remember it later? All right, we're in a good crowd then. We all tend to do that. So that's kind of a normal thing. So I wouldn't get too worried about it. One of the very first Alzheimer's support groups that I went to said something that I remember to this day, and I started going to these groups in 1997. And they said, if you can remember that you forgot, you're okay. But if you don't know that you forgot, your family probably needs to be taking you to a doctor. So if you remember that you forgot, you're okay. There's nothing wrong. We all do that.